Cody,
What's up?
you want to do a deck profile?
Yeah, I guess.
Hell yeah, man. Because, obviously this is something that you and I put together, and I want to say, like, mostly you, but, this turned out super well, and let's show it to the public.
Yeah, I think it's like probably about as good as you can get Blue to be at the moment.
There you go. Well, hey, guys, this is Phil Plays TCG, and I'm joined once again by Cody Vojtech. How you doing, my guy?
I'm doing all right.
Well, I'm very happy you're here because once again, you helped me build this deck. I wanted to play Trunks, but I just couldn't figure out, the right build for it. And you gave me some amazing ideas, and we we chatted back and forth building this list here, and it turned out really well. And
Yeah.
obviously, I went 4-0 today at my celebrations event, and it was quite the day.
I definitely think this is a very interesting take on the deck because it's the only deck that can play like this, which is pretty unique.
Yes, exactly. It plays very differently than the other two blue decks, which Vegeta is primarily if you have 7 cards or less in hand, you get cool effect. Goku Black primarily relies on its critical front side ability and its ability to play Goku Black, the big boss, on its backside for 2 less. But Trunks is the perfect mid-range deck, wouldn't you agree?
Compared to those two, yeah, because you know me, I'm all about that starter coup life.
Oh, I'm aware. If you haven't already checked out that video, link in the description. Very, very good video. But today we're going to go over the list here. We'll go through each card individually, kind of talk about how I played it, what cool things you can do with it, and we'll just kind of go from there. All right, first up, obviously we have 4 of the 1-drop Trunks. This card is your cantrip, but you can absolutely abuse it with your leader ability, which, let's just talk about the leader here real quick. Front side ability, not anything special. It's just draw 1. When you have 4 or less life, swap over. Your backside is where you really start popping off because with this leader, you want to awaken as soon as possible. You want to, if you got any way to awaken early, do it. Because on the backside, once per turn, you can choose a battle card with a cost of 3 or less and return it to its owner's hand. That includes your cards as well, which really puts this deck on a higher tier in my opinion, because you're able to offset your opponent's tempo, reuse cantrips, which, like I said, with this one here, imagine playing a Trunks. For the viewers at home, imagine playing your 1-drop Trunks, using your leader ability, bounce it back to your hand, then play another Trunks. So for 2 energy, you essentially draw 2 more cards, which is insane.
Yeah, it does prevent you from building up your board, but we're playing a very specific way against most matchups with this particular list. So it doesn't really our board state's not going to be relevant until we've charged our 4th energy,
Yes.
or 3rd if we've got the marker.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so because you gave me such huge amount of input on this deck, tell me how does this deck want to be played? You can explain it better to the viewers at home.
So the majority of leaders you play against, you actually don't want to hit them at all, and the reason for that being is you want to rely on them drawing self-awakeners. The one thing that Blue has going for it right now, it has the single best self-awakening card in the game. In my will allow you to pick up 2 of your life, and you can use these very early to get flipped right away and start accruing advantage without having to attack your opponent. And this is the only deck in the game besides Broly, and Broly can't do it until he's flipped either, but he has a much harder time being flipped, with Green having such great self-awakening cards.
Mm-hmm.
But Trunks gets to sit here and play cantrips that draw or filter through his deck without having to attack. And this allows him to still build a hand while you are unable to attack him without giving up a card of your own to even threaten his life. So Trunks will basically try to play Mize, take his life very rapidly, and then he'll flip over, and then he'll start going cantrip, draw a card, return the cantrip to his hand, and then replay the cantrip, drawing a card, and then leaving it there. So it's just on the board. If you're against decks like Red, you'll obviously play it once, draw, and bounce it back because they still can't hit you, but then you still get to keep drawing the card without them being able to remove it or prevent you from drawing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Clear board with your leader ability while drawing cards and just reusing great on-play cards. It's a really fun deck. And like I said, we're going to finish up this video here going through the rest of the deck, and you're going to kind of see what we mean here. Next up, of course, we have 3 copies of Videl. Not gonna lie, the reason why it's not 4 is because I have a super pre-release Yajirobe super combo in here, and I just wanted to flex a little bit. But super combos.
Not 4 Yajirobes? Come
I
on.
know, I probably should swap to Yajirobe at this point. Just play them all the same. Next up, we have 2 Sinister Sickle. Card is gas. This card helps so much in those games where you're going against decks with wider boards, such as yellow and red to an extent. It doesn't do so well into green because green plays a lot of higher cost bodies, but for your yellow and red matchups, it's fantastic.
If you're playing against green, you draw this card, it is immediately charged. It is completely dead.
Yeah, no, green don't play anything less than 5. You kidding me? Next we have, there's a Yajirobe. 2 Trunks Youth. So this is a pick card that I kept in the deck. You told me to get rid of it, but this is a card I solely kept in the deck as a way to help Self-Awaken as soon as I could, because this deck doesn't rely on the having 7 or less cards in hand. You want to have as many cards in your hand. So it's permanent, doesn't really work in this deck unless it's really in a late game, but this did come in handy today. It did help me Self-Awaken, I think, in 2 of my games. So I do think it's a decent option, especially if you just want to make sure you're able to get to your backside as soon as possible.
Hey, I didn't say cut it. I said get it down. There's too many copies. Yeah, I didn't. I vouch for playing this card.
Oh, okay. My apologies then. 2 copies, pretty solid. 4 Gallic Gun, obviously it's a great card. It being able to be used, the 15k boost on either turn, yours or your opponent's. And typically you want to hold on to these, at least what I did was typically hold on to these until the very end game where my hand was already getting low. So I could take advantage of the draw ability since you only draw if you have 7 or less cards in hand.
Yeah, I think this card is absolutely crazy. The fact that you can use it on either turn gives it the versatility and the flexibility to even use it outside of the 7-card threshold. If you need to defend your 4 life, because you do rapidly go to 4 life, and you have to keep that in mind. So if they're going to actually invest in putting attacks in you, you need to be able to defend those attacks. Gallic Gun, if not the other extra card that I'm sure is still in this deck, is a great option to actually defend those attacks. And don't worry, if you're not drawing a card and you're still outside the 7-card threshold, it's still worth it to use this if it blocks an attack that it was just enough to get out of. So it's like you saved the card anyways. So just don't regret using this. If somebody attacks you for 30 and you need the 15k to get out, just go ahead and get out of it and move on with it.
Exactly. Next, I have 2 copies of the 3-drop Trunks with on play, add up to 1 card from your life to your hand. Once again, another Self-Awakener if need be. Then choose up to 1 battle card with a cost of 5 or less and return it to its owner's hand. 5 or less hits pretty much everything except green near the late game, but this is a card that you can play to disrupt your opponent's tempo, as well as possibly even return a card from your board back to your hand that you want to play again. It's a solid card, honestly. It put in work today.
I think this card's actually good against green because it hits the 5-drop Goku, and you definitely don't want that on the board. You'd rather them break the energy and not get the refund, against Gohan specifically. But it is okay against green. It's definitely much better against every other color. But green does definitely have targets that you don't mind returning in, because I mean half the time the Goku's going to stay inactive anyways, so you can't attack it. This gets it off the board, so you can kind of get some pushing through onto their face. And then they can't block your attacks for free, quote unquote, because obviously if they're able to use their leader effect with the Goku on the board, it was just a free 15k combo. So anytime you can mitigate that and put pressure on, it's a huge deal. So that's why I'm a big proprietor of this card.
Card is nuts, absolutely. Next we have 2 Final Flash. This didn't come up too often today. I think I did use it. I think I used it twice. It's a great way to get rid of most decks' boss monster. Being able to bottom deck a 5 cost or less on the board as long as you discard 1. It is 1 less if you have 7 or less cards in hand, but it did come in handy near the end game when my opponent would play their 5-drop Goku, their 5-drop Frieza, any 5-drop or less. It's a great card.
Also, it's important to have some form of removal outside of just Sickle, because hitting something that's just fine. And this also, like I said, bot decks the 5-drop Goku, and that's really important against green, because if they don't have another one to produce, Like Broly all of a sudden is actually breaking an energy to draw. Gohan is now breaking an energy for his free combo effect. A lot of they still rely on having that card on board for maximum power, and taking it from them forces them to have another one to produce or start having to actually commit a permanent resource to it.
Exactly. Next up, we have For Mai, the MVP of the deck, just in my opinion because of her, like you mentioned earlier, her Awakening tech. Being able to play it on your turn 1, you can take 2 life. Automatically, you're getting more card advantage because you now essentially drew 2 cards and you are now closer to Awakening. You play this on your turn 1 going second. If you have 2 in hand, just play them back to back. Awaken on your turn 1. You now have 4 more cards in hand than your opponent does, and you can start abusing your leader ability. And now your opponent's leader has to sacrifice more resources in order to swing in lethal for you. It's just an amazing card.
Yeah, and then the Mai's against the crit leaders, you just combo them off. Like, okay, now I block your attack for one of these cards for free, which is really important that you get to conserve that shield value and actually block the attacks. So, I mean, Mai is just fantastic card. I mean, her second effect probably never comes up ever. Probably maybe once every like 12 games, you'll get some sort of benefit from it.
Yeah.
But I mean, realistically, she's in the deck because she reads draw 2 cards from your life, essentially. That is her purpose.
Exactly. But yeah, that second ability didn't really come in handy today, but oh man, there were a couple games where I drew 2 in my opening hand and I'm like, yep, this is the time. Next we have 2 copies of Vegeta. This is essentially your boss monster of the game. It's the typical 5-drop double striker with an amazing on-play ability. In this case, being able to bottom deck a 4 cost. This came in clutch today, playing against the 2 red decks that I played. Being able to bottom deck their Goku SCR.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think this was the best 5-drop boss monster of the starter deck boss monsters, because it immediately hits the curve beneath it. And that's like really powerful that it just straight up removes the curve beneath it, and it bot decks it, which is the best form of removal. Like, you don't have to worry about anything, even in the future, playing that card again. So, I mean, it's not KO'd, it doesn't go to drop, it's not minus, it just flat out bot decks it, don't have to worry about it, likely not seeing that card ever again. And it's also a double striker, which you do need for this deck.
Oh, 100%. This helped me secure the win. I know at least one of my games, just because of having that higher attack stat into double strike, it was just, chef's kiss. Next we have For Pilaf, the mischievous, infamous Pilaf. We all know this card is insane, being able to just recycle itself as long as you have 7 or less cards in hand. Not great in the beginning of the game because obviously you're getting as many resources as you can, so you're drawing a crap ton of cards. But late game, when you need to like just conserve your resources and reuse a lot of things, this card is absolute gas.
Oh yeah, so the way you look at this is like if you have them early, they're just free 10k combos, right? You just want to always make sure you keep one. And then once you get to the late game, you're going to start cycling these boys. Think of the 7-card threshold in this deck as going Super Saiyan, okay? You don't intend to get there, but your opponent's going to force you to that point at some point in the game. Nice. And that's when you start abusing the blue power spike of 7 or less. But you want to try to get a humongous amount of resources early for a couple of reasons. 1, it lets you see more cards in your deck. And 2, it allows you to deal with different threats easier. So having the huge amount of advantage that you can generate with this deck early, and then waiting for your opponent to like commit to pressuring you to force you down to 7, and then only for your deck to get much stronger at that point is a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll go over a ridiculous combo I used later in the game, in one of my games later in this video. Next we have, oh, there it is, Final Hope Slash. This card is insane. It is a 1-drop, activate battle on your turn, choose up to one of your leaders or your battle cards, and it gets 20k power for the turn. Sorry, for the battle. Then choose up to 1 battle card with a cost of 2 or less and return it to its owner's hand. This card is, first of all, fantastic in its own right, but the part that really sets it off is the fact that it is an Earthling. It has the Earthling tag, which Pilaf can target. If you haven't already heard, viewer at home, these 2 cards cycle, and it is insane what they do. Yeah,
so if you don't know the whole combo, it's you can play a Pilaf. If you're at 7 or less, pick up Final Hope Slash. swing with something, activate final. So, for example, you had a Mai still on the board that's been there for like since turn 1. You can now swing with that Mai, activate Final Hope / pick the peel off back up, and the Mai is just a nice casual 25k swing in. Then you can pay 1 and replay the peel off, picking up the Hope / that you just used to generate attack, put it back in your hand, and now swing with your leader and activate Final Hope / again, swing for 40k, pick up the peel off, and you can use that to like turn any card in this deck into a relevant attack. Any card in your deck, as long as you have access to Final Hope / is now a relevant attacker.
Yeah, absolutely. During one of my games, my opponent went down to 1 life because he was just trying to get resources. What I ended up doing was played peel off, grabbed Final Hope /, swung with leader. I only had my leader and my 5-drop Vegeta on board, by the way. Swung with leader, played Final Hope /, grabbed peel off back to my hand. He was able to get out of it using 2 super combos, I believe. No, sorry, super combo or another card. Then I was like, cool, play peel off again. Grab Final Hope /, swing with Vegeta. And then Final Hope / combo the peel off, and then the rest of my hand, and that secured me the win. My opponent had no idea Final Hope / could be recycled like that. It was disgusting. It was like seeing his face, he was like, how is this legal?
Yeah, sometimes that's the thing about blue. Like, I know it, like on paper, it looks like the weakest color, and it very well may be. I'm actually leaning towards that it probably is. But the good things that it got are just so good. Like the looping of peel off with Hope /, Mai is fantastic. Final Flash and Gatlic Gun are just fantastic cards. Sinister Sickle is a crazy card, and 5-drop Vegeta, like I said, I think is the best of the 5-drop double strikers.
Oh yeah, it just the value that blue can get with recurring cards is what makes this deck so versatile into a lot of other decks, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even gotten to like the cool thing about this particular deck.
Oh no, I think that might be the next card. Let's see here. Nope, not exactly, but we run 3 of the 2-drop 30k Trunks. When attacking at the end of the turn, place this card at the bottom of your deck. This card, you would think, oh, I pay 2 for a 30k swing and then I lose it. Not necessarily, because your leader gets to use his ability to place it back into your hand. So you're not technically out of resource. You get a 30k swing and then you bring it back to your hand to be used as a 10k counter if you need to. Once again, some players at my locals didn't realize that you could do that with the Trunks leader, and it's just a good feeling, you know?
And sometimes you're on 4 energy and they're on like 1 life, and you're like, all right, pay 2, swing with Trunks, and they combo out, and then you're like, cool, bounce it back to hand, pay 2, play Trunks, swing with it again. And it just allows you to like invest. It always gives you an energy sink, and that's like a nice thing about blue is you always have a way to spend your energy, even if it's just recycling peel offs and Hope / and getting a bunch of value that way. You still have a really easy way to always sink energy, which is something that like not every deck can do.
Oh man, no, it's absolutely fantastic. I did actually use this in one of my games where I was able to just, play it, bounce it, play it again, and it just helps reduce resources. Your opponent always has to either get rid of a super combo, a 15k event, or they have to get rid of 2 cards out of hand. Like this card.
That's also really good at contesting their board.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see what next here. Oh, here we go. We have 3 copies of critical 4-drop Trunks. 25k body with the critical ability. On play, choose up to 1 battle card with a cost of 3 or less and return it to its owner's hand. Obviously has great tempo because you're able to bounce something back to your opponent's hand or yours, which we've already shown off like a bunch of really cool cards that you would love to just abuse the crap out of their on-play abilities. And then being able to swing 25 crit is fantastic. Means your opponent's always going to have to give up at least 1 10k counter. And this card goes along with your philosophy with this deck of never attacking your opponent's leader. This is the card that you use to attack your opponent's leader, correct?
This and one other.
Yes, absolutely. That is going to be, let's see here if that's the, nope.
There he is.
Other cards. There it is. Vegeta. All right, so basically, we all know Vegeta for 4-drop 30k body with critical. Basically, these 2 cards are the ones you use to attack your opponent's leader. They have to combo out of all those attacks, or else they're just wasting. They're losing a life. and they're not getting that resource, which is really fun.
Yeah, and the thing that makes this work is, like, for example, green doesn't have a lot of self-awaken. It has like 2 cards that realistically are going to be doing it. One of them costs 4 energy, so that's both 17 and 18. And the other ones are 2-drop Paraguses, which aren't going to be in every deck.
Right.
So the beauty of this is most matchups won't be able to deal with you never attacking them, which is going to set them back, or force them to have opened really well, or even just a lot of people be like, well, I already have one self-awakener. He's going to hit me once. I'll charge the second one. And charging that second one ends up being a horrible mistake because you're just never going to hit them. And then when you don't hit them, you start playing these crit guys as the game goes. You only ever swing leader into their board, and you stop this philosophy once they hit 4 life. Once they can awaken, your leader starts going into face every single swing. No questions asked. But you want to deny them as many cards as humanly possible while still drawing with Trunks, because you're the only leader besides Awoke Broly who can draw without having to attack the opponent's leader, essentially. So using that philosophy, you rely on these 2 crit attackers to push in damage on their leader if they're still not awoke. I know they're 4-drops, and that feels like it takes forever, but it really isn't as bad as it seems. It just allows you to make sure that you're going to be up in resources while your opponent has to get starved. And if they ever play a battle card and attack you, obviously you can still get the draw with your leader by swinging your leader at it, which is what you would always do. It's like, oh, you played a battle card, that's just another card for me, swing at it. And it just piles on a bunch of starving your opponent when you're already failing to give them any resources on top of like just denying swinging.
Oh, absolutely. Now, like these, it was hard to get them out on board, not gonna lie, but once I did, being able to swing in with a very powerful pressure point card felt great. Your opponent always had to make sure they comboed out of it, and they also had to make sure they dealt with it on their turn, which saved you because they weren't focusing on your life. They were going after your board, which with all the defensive cards we have in here, it was easier to defend them, but worst case scenario, if you have to let them go, you have to let them go. As long as you can get them down to relatively like 3 or 2 life, then they're not needed as much.
No, once your opponent's 4 life, these cards are they're pretty much dead. The crit only starts mattering at that point if they're at like 2 and you want to land a crit so that you can push them from 2 to 1 without giving them a card, and then you'll go ahead and finish them off with. If your leader gets in a swing when they're at 1 life, you win the game essentially, because there's like no way that they can survive how big Trunks leader can get. Like you can just get so much power through peel off looping final hope slashes. Like you can go peel off, pick up, peel off, play peel off, pick up, peel off, play peel off, pick up, hope slash, and you've just made 50k combo power right there without accounting for any cards in your hand.
Oh yeah.
So if you ever hit 1 life against Trunks, just accept that you're dead. Unless you're like green with like 4 gigantic meteors and 3 super combos, you're probably just gonna die.
Which has happened before. It's scary.
Yes.
Next, we have 2 copies of the 1-drop Goten. You had me put this in the deck because you were right. It makes a great, last-minute attacker if your opponent's at 1 life, or you need to get 1 extra swing in. 15k just means that you just have to throw a 5k on it to make it lethal. Worst case, it's a 10k counter. To be honest, I didn't really ever have a chance to use this. It never came up where I needed that, where it was in my hand and I needed that 1 more one more swing, but I like what it does, and like I said, it's a 1-drop 10k counter at its worst, which is usable with Pilaf's ability.
So I'll explain why this card's in the deck, because it actually does have a specific purpose. This card is a really good hope slash target. Like a hope slash makes it a 35, and with the peel off that you've just put on the board, it's a 45. So for a 3 energy investment, you make a 45k swing, which is really high. That's a really high power. And then the cool thing is, after it swings, you've comboed off the peel off, you can leader effect, scoop it back up, and then swing and combo it off, which is really good. That's really, really good. So you still get the ability to you basically get value out of this card twice, which is why I like playing it. I always like playing the skillless 15Ks in blue because of the peel off loop and hope slash combo, because then you board the highest power card you can board for 1 energy, and then you stack a bunch of power on it. So that was the argument with why you still want to play a couple of these, because sometimes your opponent's at 2, their hand's been low from the grinding, and you're just like, okay, we'll just make this thing like 45 with no actual hand investment, and we'll see what they do. And if they give up their cards, then you just play for advantage, and you try to kill them next turn with like a crit swing now that they're finally down on cards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I didn't even think about that yet, but you're right. This card combined with Hope Slash, Jesus. Insane value.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have 2 Bulmas. This card was in the deck because, like, sometimes, depending on your matchup, you may need a late game blocker. But for the most part, if you play red or red or green, it's a little more rough to play this card because those colors have such amazing being able to destroy a bunch of cards on your board that are low cost. Especially
Yep, it might as well not have effects against Beerus. Like, this card just doesn't. It just sits in your hand. It's 10k counter.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of what I use it for with peel off. Is just I grabbed it from my trash to get an additional 10k swing. 10k counter. It's good stuff. The one time I did play it defensively, my opponent was playing yellow. He couldn't KO it, so I was able to block with it, which felt good. Saved me, honestly, from taking a life down to 0. Down to 1 life. But yeah, it's a solid card. It's very situational though.
Yeah, but being able to pick up a blocker late game with peel off when your opponent's like running low on answers, that's when it starts shining.
Yes, exactly. Speaking of, we got 2 Pan. This is a great just 1-drop draw 2, discard 2 if you really need to cycle your hand. If you didn't get a great hand after your second mulligan, this is a great way to fix that. In worst case, it is also a 10k counter. That's a 1-drop Earthling that once again can be cycled with peel off.
Yeah, if you didn't see my turn 1, this is like your typical go-to play besides Trunks. You'll try to dig for Mai, because as soon as you see 1 Mai, you're essentially off to the races. So that's like your primary goal is to get Mai. You keep any that if your hand is opening a Mai plus any other life taker, it's almost for sure a keep. But if you don't have a Mai and you've mulliganed and you still don't have a Mai but you drew Pan, think of Pan as like copies 5 and 6 of Mai, because their primary purpose is to dig for that card.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And the card did work. I think in one of my games I did play it and I drew off Mai, so worked out perfectly for me. Next we have this card came in clutch. Black Kamehameha. It is an activate battle for 1 energy. During your opponent's turn, it gives your leader or battle card plus 20k for the battle. Then you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and place them at the top or bottom of your deck in any order. No one that I played this against thought about this card. Like, they did not even remember this card existed. But this card is phenomenal. I like to think of it as like the opposite of Final Hope Slash. This is only on your turn. Black Kamehameha is on your opponent's turn. But getting that 20k on defense is basically just a 1-cost super combo. But being able to look at the top 3 of your deck, decide like, yeah, these 3 cards are good. I'll keep them and I'll arrange them like this because you have your leader ability. You know what card you're going to draw next turn. Then you know what your next card will be. You can draw off your leader swing. And then if the 3 cards are bad, just bottom deck them. You know, like, it helps.
And if you want all 3, if you have a single copy of Trunks Youth in your hand, you're drawing all 3 of those cards.
Right. Like, it's a phenomenal card on defense. Like, just getting an additional 20k is huge.
Really helps defending your guys too, like especially when you're like at 6 energy and Vegeta's on the board and their only hope is to try to run it over, so they combo like pretty heavy into it or attack it with a big attacker and invest very minimal into it. You can punish those by just going ahead and going Black Kamehameha plus 10k and keep your big guys around if they didn't have hard effect removal.
Right, exactly. Like, just play that, you know, with any other card, like low cost card, you're getting out of almost any attack. It's essentially just getting another super combo. And then finally, I ran 2 copies of Vegeta. This card is really neat. For a while, I couldn't figure out how to properly play it, but realizing that its ability just works well with this deck is fantastic, because you are drawing so many cards early on in the game because of you're abusing the crap out of the 1-drop Trunks here. You have a pretty big hand, and because you can cycle cards from your discard back to your hand with peel off, you're not afraid to drop some of your 1-cost Earthling cards. So with this Vegeta's ability, during your main turn, you can discard 1 card from hand to get this card an additional 15k power for the turn. During your 20k into a 35k. And then worst case, you can use peel off to grab whatever card you just discarded back to your hand. But like I said, because you're drawing so many cards, it's not a big problem to just discard one, you're more than likely going to get it back, and you already have a bunch of other resources. But getting a 35k swing in with this guy, and not many people have this card, so not many people are even thinking about playing it, or even think that most blue players have it. But it's a really solid card.
The big advantage of this card is the fact that it doesn't have anything. It doesn't care about your hand threshold. That's really the selling point. It's a 10k combo too, unlike the starter deck Gohan, which is a 5k and requires you to be at the 7 card threshold. These cards are both the same power on defense, so it doesn't really matter. But the fact this is a 10k combo, and you can use it with your massive hand that you can build over the course of the game to contest battle cards or start pressuring them as soon as they go to 4 life. Like, for example, if you're fighting Broly, you want to slam this guy, discard the card, and use this to push them from 4 to 3 or force them to awaken on that attack and still commit like an actual good card, like 15k or a super combo to still get out of this swing with 0 investment besides the card that you intend to get back later that you discarded. Or, like I said, we're in a green matchup, so you discard Sinister Sickle because it has no text. So there's a lot of cool uses for this card, but the biggest one is that blue struggles with good battle cards. They don't have good battle cards. And I hate saying that, but unfortunately it's true, because I've already said that like Mai is cracked and 5-drop Vegeta is the best of the 5-drop double strikers. But then you look at every other blue card and they're about like building advantage or cycling or some sort of advantage based card. None of them are actually very aggressively statted. And the ones that are require you to be at the 7 or less threshold. And Trunks just doesn't want to do that. He doesn't operate like Vegeta. He doesn't get a giant leader swing for free. You don't get free pressure as Trunks. So because of that, you need to make up for it somehow. So the best way I figured to play Trunks would be to just forego the 7 card threshold, treat it as a second power up in the middle of the game, and instead focus on cards that were just good with just your leader being awoke and trying to build advantage that way. So Vegeta being the only big attacker that's under curve for the entire color, essentially, besides Trunks himself, who, if you don't use your leader effect on him, he -1s you to activate it to basically be a swing. Vegeta -1s you, but he gets to stick around to threaten to do that again every turn, forcing removal into him. And that's kind of important to have access to that. So just having cards that are able to function without forcing you to the 7 hand size is extremely important.
Oh, absolutely. And actually a really neat little trick I used to win one of my matches was I swung with the Vegeta for 35. He was able to combo out of it. I used my leader ability to bounce it back to my hand, and I was then able to use it as a 10k combo to strengthen the swing of my last attack that did eventually, that it did actually win me the game. So I just love that ability to bounce cards, because I can use a card, but then reuse it for combo power. If Vegeta lives a turn, don't be afraid. And this is like a big tip I'll give all you guys really trying to play blue that you're struggling to kill like these tankier green decks. When one of your 30Ks or bigger gets in and does a damage or gets like 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, get it back in your hand and combo it on the leader. You need to burn as much of their hand as possible, because you can't be outground. Blue cannot be outground if you and your opponent are in a simplified game state, because you have infinite resources. You have infinite number of peel off, infinite number of final hope slash. You can't run out of cards. And because you can't run out of cards, they have to just kill you, which is often what happens because blue can't apply enough pressure to win. Being able to use your cards 2 to 3 times for each card that you have is really important. So going like pay 2 for Trunks, swing for 30, bounce it to hand, swing with your leader, comboing the Trunks, stuff like that. Those are all really important play lines that you have to always be thinking about, because it's about how quickly you can damage your opponent to a threshold where either 5-drop Vegeta kills them or your leader with like a bajillion power attached to it kills them. That's really what you're trying to get to. Oh, 100%. Going over my matches here, I will admit 100%, and this may shock people, I completely avoided playing any green decks. Like, straight up, I avoided.
That shocked me.
There were 3 green players. There was a 16-person celebration event. We had 2 green Gohan and 1 green androids. Green androids didn't do so hot. They were at like, I think 1 and 3 at the end of the day. But the 2 green Gohans ended up going against each other in round 2. And essentially knocking one of them out of the race, which left me with only really 1 to worry about, which was played by my buddy. And he eventually lost his round 3 while I won mine. So that just guaranteed me not being I guess not seeing green for my final match, which this is what I was worried about, because green is the one color that I'm still iffy on how to play exactly with this deck, because you typically, like you said, you don't want to swing into your opponent's leader unless you're swinging with a crit attacker, and you want to build up as many resources as you can. The problem with playing against a green deck is that regardless if you don't attack them, they're just rampant. They're doing their own thing, and they can start playing big bodies on board regardless if they're awakened. And at that point, it's a very tough hill to climb back on, because just like I said, green plays big bodies that blow up a lot of things on your board, and this deck, as far as I've played it, is still rough into green, but every other color, I think this deck is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to just deal with green. The fact that you're trying, I think against green, you just have to give up the goat and just attack them. You can't really deny green or let green have too much time without putting any pressure on them, because obviously if they get to ramp, they just start slaughtering you, and it gets really bad really fast. But yeah, that's probably what I would consider. But against any other color, you can adapt the I'm just going to wait philosophy and just crit them and deny them a bunch of cards, and then use your 7-card threshold in the middle or at the end of the game as like a huge power up. And if don't feel bad comboing if you're attacked for like 40k or 50k and you're like, man, I got to give up 4 cards. If getting those 4 cards there and puts you to 7, you gained. You didn't lose anything. Go ahead and just combo those 4 cards. Go down from 11 to 7 to get out of the swing, and then you just realize, okay, power threshold activated. I'm going to charge, be at 7, and my whole deck is on, and you slam the gas from there.
Oh yeah, 100%. That was pretty much my late game plan with almost every deck I played against. But going back to my matches, round 1 was a Beerus. Round 1 was a starter Vegeta. That one, Vegeta's a good blue leader, definitely, but just the resources that I was able to accumulate with this Trunks, and I'll admit the player was still pretty new to the game, but I was able to squeak out that win. Round 2 was Beerus. Beerus is a very scary deck to me because it's a great red control deck, but I realized that early on, as long as I don't have a lot of battle cards on board, or if any, a lot of Beerus's cards don't do anything. I was able to swing with a card and bounce it back to hand. Even my opponent at one point was like, you're not giving me anything to attack or anything to minus power from. And eventually I was just able to slowly drain them of resources. Round 3 was Frieza. Once again, just controlling the board, using cards like Sinister Sickle to lower their wide board state, just swinging in tall. It was a pretty close game. And then finally, round 4 was another Beerus. And same thing, just don't give them a lot of targets for Beerus, to his battle cards to do anything, and then eventually once they play a battle card, you can deal with it with one of your battle cards, either bouncing it back to hand. That's a huge thing. Bouncing Red's battle cards back to their hand puts them way back on their curve. It just puts them behind on the game. So they're playing a card. Yeah, it feels real bad when they have to play a card again that has an on-play ability, but when you don't give them a lot of cards to use their on-play abilities towards, and you're just making them waste up energy to replay that card again, where they may not be able to play multiple cards that they were planning on. It's a really great feeling. This deck you're putting your opponent behind while you're getting ahead and gaining resources.
A little mind game you can do too is you can just swing a battle card at their rest mode 3-drop, their 20k, we'll just say against Red's Gohan, the 3-drop Gohan that neg 10s the board.
Yeah.
You can just swing your leader at it. If they combo a card for it and you bounce it back to their hand, that's a super neg for them. That's the biggest neg they can get, because they invested 3 energy, which was their turn.
Yep.
The card got maybe comboed out of. It probably didn't kill anything. It maybe killed, just a cantrip. And then to make matters worse, they also tried to give up a card to defend it. So a lot of the times you're going to notice, when you swing your leader at a 3 cost or less 20k, your opponent will almost always let it die, because there's a good chance that it's better to let it go than them get their whole turn turned off and combo a card to get it. So keeping that in mind, that's just a little mind game you can do with Trunks. Just always swing your leader at 20k battle cards. Just No reason not to, unless they're at 4 or less. If your opponent is at 4 or less, every single leader swing should always go into their leader. Unless it's Broly, you can give some consideration to not, but you should always be putting pressure on the leader because you can't go forever. You need the game to get simplified as fast as possible.
Yep.
So getting your opponent to kill threshold is the most important thing with this deck, more than controlling the board, more than anything. Once they've reached 4 or less, like your game plan needs to go from not let them have board, completely deny resources to starve them, to kill them as fast as possible once they've reached their awakened threshold, because now you have no reason to deny them anymore.
Absolutely. Like this, like I'll admit I did do some misplays throughout my day, but even with a couple misplays that in hindsight I immediately saw like, crap, why did I do that? This deck still, came out the winner, and I just think that speaks a lot of volume for this deck's capabilities. I feel like it's a great mid-range deck that can go against a lot of different decks in the format. Like we said, the only thing that is a little iffy still is green. That's the one deck you want to play a bit differently. But for the rest of them, I think this deck has a lot of answers to a lot of powerful decks in this format. I definitely think people should not sleep on Trunks.
No, I think it's decent. I definitely think it's probably the best blue deck, but some people are going to say it's Vegeta. Some people are the really crazy people are going to say it's Goku Black. Okay, let's be real here. But I'm pretty sure it's Trunks. He's the most flexible, and he's the only one who can completely alter the game plan like on a fly immediately, and he is very, very good at it.
Oh man, I'll keep working on this. This list may change. The only thing that I would even remotely think of changing was that there was a couple times today that I was really hoping there was a final hope slash in my discard to recur, but there were times where I didn't see a final hope slash until like the final turn. So I wish I could maybe throw like a third one in there, but I don't know what I would take out specifically.
You could cut a Gatlic gun for it and just run 3. Realistically, and I'll be completely honest with the viewers, you really want to try to get 3 to 4 copies of this promo Vegeta. It just works so well with this leader, with this deck specifically, because the whole thing with this deck is just getting as much advantage as possible early. So there's going to be games where your opponent's going to have like 9 cards to your like 14. And that's not a very uncommon thing to have happen. When that does happen, Vegeta really puts in the work, because like in order for them to out combo his damage, they're going to have to either give you a super combo, which is a really high quality card, or they're going to have to actually invest like an event card or an extra card plus another card, because most events are going to be 15s, or they're going to have to actually give you like a 10, like 2 10Ks, which is like the best case scenario for you if they have to feed you 2 10s. But think of this way, if you play him and you're on 14 and your opponent's on 9, you discard 1. So now we're down to 12, because we went down 2 cards. We've played Vegeta and discarded 1. Yeah. If your opponent then has to concede 2 cards to not take this damage, they've went from 9 down to 7. And if you're just winning, like you're just straight up winning at that point, especially because you can just like bounce the Vegeta back, then swing with your leader, shove another 30 onto them. And if they don't have a super or an extra, they're really just hammering their whole hand back. So, and you didn't lose any additional cards for putting back the Vegeta and comboing it, right? Because you already accounted for its loss when you played it.
Right. Exactly. Like this deck, like just looking at it, I have so much fun with it. And today was just, I felt very big brained, and it was a really fun deck that a lot of my opponents didn't realize could do certain things that it can. And it's nuts. It's absolutely I think it's a really good deck. Is it one of the best decks in the format? Probably not, but it is a deck that I could see this as a rogue deck. Absolutely, for sure.
If this deck, like maybe not exactly card for card, maybe some minor modifications, if a deck extremely similar to this one topped a regional or even had a chance of winning, I would be shocked if it won, but I would not be shocked if it topped. I think that it's good enough to probably get there, and if you're really willing to put in the time and actually learn the matchups, like knowing when, like what decks you should be attacking, what decks you shouldn't be attacking, when you should be abandoning the hard resource gain for trying to push, when you start like getting all the little nuance of the deck, it can actually perform pretty well. I mean, I don't think it holds up to like full power green. I don't think it's like going to win those games very consistently, but it can still win them. You definitely have the ability I think you're better against Broly than you are the other 2 green decks, mainly because you're already cramming like 30k plus into this throat, and he doesn't like that at all. because then he still has to give you 10Ks, and he just doesn't build a giant hand without the 5-drops on the board. And we've already talked about how easy it is for Trunks to hit 5-drops. If you're playing 5-drops, man, they're not doing much.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Broly's hand isn't going to be very big, and he's got to commit the 5. And if you remove it, he's like, well, I guess I'm just not drawing cards anymore. So, and that's what you want to get. You want to get to the position where your opponent just has a hard time playing into what you're doing, and this deck is fantastic at that.
Oh, man. Well, I think that will wrap it up on the deck profile here, and I hope that everyone at home is watching this enjoyed it quite a bit. You know, this was a more in-depth profile, and I'm glad that Cody was here to help explain everything, because the man's better with words than I am. And if you want to give Blue Trunks a shot, I definitely recommend a list similar to this. Like we said, there may be some modifications that are done. This is a 52 card list. If you got some amazing ideas, put them in the comments down below. Anything you want to say to the fans, Cody?
Shouts to the Central Ohio crew and Heroes and Games, best store ever. Shoutouts to Giancarlo and the group chat, and shoutouts to Eric and Evo and Chris Spencer, and of course, shouts to Aspira. That man's the GOAT. I love that guy,
dude. Yeah, we got shouted out by him. That was.
I know. That's why he's getting a shout out right back.
Exactly. Oh man.
Tag, you're it, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you so much for shouting us out. Thank you to every single person that has helped get this channel to where it is at now. We are only 44, I think, at the time of recording this, subs away from 1,000. So that is fantastic. If you guys like the content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. And I think that'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, Cody, for hopping on this video. It was always a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. You have yourself a wonderful rest of your day. And until the next video, take care.